As the year 2025 drew to a close, a maelstrom of unimaginable force descended upon South and Southeast Asia. What began as the familiar annual monsoon season spiraled into a catastrophic event, unleashing deadly floods and landslides across the region. By early December, a grim picture had emerged, a human tragedy of historic proportions. The storms did not discriminate, but their deadliest wrath was concentrated on the nations of Indonesia and Sri Lanka. These countries found themselves grappling with a natural disaster more devastating than anything they had faced in years, a stark and brutal reminder of nature's overwhelming power. The scale of the disaster was staggering, leaving a trail of destruction that will be etched in the memory of this generation for a very long time. The numbers alone tell a story of immense suffering and loss. Across the affected countries, the death toll climbed relentlessly, surpassing 1,140 people, with hundreds more still unaccounted for, lost to the raging waters or buried beneath tons of mud. In Indonesia, the situation was particularly dire, with authorities confirming over 600 fatalities and more than 500 individuals missing. This made it the nation's deadliest disaster since 2018. Sri Lanka faced a similar nightmare, reporting 390 deaths in what President Anura Kumara Dissanayake called a humanitarian crisis of historic proportions, the worst since the devastating 2004 tsunami. The impact rippled outwards, with Thailand, Vietnam, and Malaysia also counting their dead and displaced, painting a portrait of a region united in grief. The immediate aftermath was a scene of chaos and desperation. The relentless downpours swamped entire villages, turning streets into raging rivers and forcing millions to flee their homes with nothing but the clothes on their backs. In Indonesia alone, an estimated 1.4 million people were directly affected, their lives upended in an instant. In Sri Lanka, over 1 million people were displaced. The very infrastructure of daily life crumbled under the assault. Roads became impassable, bridges collapsed, and communication lines were severed, effectively isolating countless communities from the outside world and any hope of immediate aid. This widespread damage created a logistical nightmare for first responders, who were locked in a desperate race against time to reach those who were trapped and vulnerable. The disaster was not confined to a single day or a single storm. It was a prolonged and terrifying siege. For weeks, the skies over South and Southeast Asia remained a foreboding grey, unleashing wave after wave of torrential rain. Families who had managed to survive the initial deluge found themselves trapped on rooftops, waving desperately for help as the floodwaters continued to rise around them. The psychological toll was immense, as the constant threat of another landslide or another surge of water left survivors in a state of perpetual fear. The rhythm of life was replaced by the rhythm of survival, a moment-to-moment struggle against the elements that had turned so violently against them, challenging the very spirit of the communities caught in the storm's path. The calamitous events of late 2025 were not the result of a single weather phenomenon, but a terrifying convergence of factors, a perfect storm. At its core was the annual monsoon, a seasonal weather pattern that brings essential rain to the region. However, this year, its intensity was supercharged. This intensification was driven by a prolonged La Niña cycle, a climate pattern in the Pacific Ocean, known for bringing wetter conditions to Southeast Asia. This alone would have been cause for concern, but it was the arrival of several rare and powerful tropical storms that tipped the scales from a severe weather event into an unprecedented catastrophe. The combination of these forces created a weather system of extreme power and destructive capability, catching many by surprise. Making matters far worse were two rare cyclonic systems that brewed with unusual ferocity. Cyclone Ditwah, which formed over the Bay of Bengal, slammed into Sri Lanka with brutal force before moving towards southern India. Its arrival unleashed torrential rains and powerful winds that overwhelmed the island nation's defenses. Simultaneously, another rare storm, named Cyclone Ditwah, materialized in the Strait of Malacca. This storm system was highly unusual for the area and brought a deluge of rain down upon the Indonesian island of Sumatra, as well as southern Thailand and parts of Malaysia. The simultaneous occurrence of these powerful cyclones, compounded by tropical storm Koto hitting Vietnam, created a disaster on a scale that meteorological models had rarely, if ever, predicted for the region. Behind the immediate meteorological causes lies the larger, more ominous shadow of global climate change. Scientists and organizations like the World Health Organization have been warning for years that a warming planet is turbocharging our weather systems. Warmer oceans provide more fuel for storms, allowing them to grow stronger, carry more moisture, and unleash far more rainfall when they make landfall. The extreme nature of the storms in late 2025 is seen by many experts as a textbook example of this phenomenon. It is a clear and devastating signal that climate-driven disasters are not a distant future threat. They are the new, terrifying normal we must now confront. The storms were a wake-up call, written in floodwater and mud. The disaster also exposed another man-made vulnerability: deforestation. In Indonesia, the floods washed up enormous quantities of logs, raising suspicions of widespread illegal logging in the upstream areas. Forests act as natural sponges, absorbing heavy rainfall and anchoring the soil with their root systems. When these forests are cleared, rainwater runs off the bare land with incredible speed and force, carrying soil and debris with it. This dramatically increases the risk of flash floods and deadly landslides. The loss of over 320,000 square kilometers of tree cover in Indonesia between 2001 and 2024 has left many communities dangerously exposed, turning heavy rains that might have once been manageable into unstoppable torrents of destruction. The sheer force of the floods and landslides presented monumental challenges for rescue and relief operations across the region. In country after country, the story was the same. First responders and military personnel were met with a landscape of utter devastation. Major highways were transformed into impassable canals of mud and debris, while critical bridges that connected remote villages to the outside world were simply washed away. This collapse of infrastructure left countless communities completely cut off, turning them into isolated islands amidst a sea of floodwater. Rescue teams often had to resort to perilous journeys on foot or rely on limited air assets like helicopters to reach the stranded, making every single rescue a heroic but time-consuming effort against impossible odds. The human cost of this disaster extends far beyond the tragic death toll. For the millions who survived, life has been turned completely upside down. In Indonesia, over 28,000 homes were damaged or destroyed, leaving families with nothing to return to. Across the region, hundreds of thousands were crammed into temporary evacuation centers, facing an uncertain future. The closure of over 1,000 schools in Indonesia alone meant that the education of tens of thousands of children was abruptly halted. Furthermore, the standing water and compromised sanitation systems created a breeding ground for waterborne diseases like cholera and typhoid, posing a secondary health crisis that humanitarian agencies scrambled to contain before another wave of suffering could begin. In the face of this overwhelming crisis, governments and international organizations mobilized a massive response. In Indonesia, President Prabowo Subianto visited the hard-hit provinces, and the military deployed warships and hospital ships to deliver aid. In Sri Lanka, a state of emergency was declared as the government pleaded for international assistance. Nations like India, Japan, and Pakistan were quick to respond, sending aid and supplies. In Thailand, the military launched a large-scale operation involving an aircraft carrier to rescue people trapped by the rising waters. However, despite these efforts, some governments faced criticism for a slow initial response, with officials in Indonesia admitting they were not adequately prepared for a disaster of this magnitude, highlighting a critical need for better readiness. The stories emerging from the flood zones paint a harrowing picture of survival. People were seen clinging to the roofs of their submerged homes for days, waiting for rescue that was slow to come. Families were tragically separated in the chaos, with parents losing track of their children in the surging currents. The psychological trauma of witnessing such destruction and loss is immeasurable and will linger long after the floodwaters recede. For many, the disaster represents not just the loss of a home or a livelihood, but the complete erasure of their world as they knew it. The long road to recovery will be as much about healing these invisible wounds as it will be about rebuilding the physical structures that were washed away. Even as the formal rescue operations struggled against the immense scale of the disaster, a powerful story of human resilience began to unfold. In the heart of the devastation, survivors became first responders. Neighbors formed makeshift rescue parties, using small boats or even just their bare hands to pull others from the rising waters. Those who had a little food to spare shared it with those who had none. Communities banded together to clear debris from their streets, driven by a collective will to reclaim their homes and their lives. This spirit of mutual aid, of ordinary people performing extraordinary acts of kindness and courage, served as a powerful beacon of hope in the darkest of hours, proving that the human spirit is not so easily broken. This catastrophe has delivered a harsh but vital lesson. The International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, or IFRC, emphasized that governments and organizations can no longer treat such events as rare occurrences. There is an urgent need to invest heavily in climate resilience and advanced preparedness. This means building stronger infrastructure, such as flood barriers and reinforced bridges, that can withstand more extreme weather. It also means developing and implementing far more effective early warning systems that can reach even the most remote and vulnerable communities, giving people precious time to evacuate before a disaster strikes. The price of inaction is now terrifyingly clear, and the call for proactive adaptation has never been louder. The international community's response, while substantial, highlighted the need for even greater global cooperation in the face of climate-driven disasters. The aid that flowed from neighboring countries was a testament to regional solidarity, but the crisis also underscored the need for pre-positioned resources and streamlined aid delivery mechanisms that can be activated instantly. As climate change continues to make extreme weather more frequent and severe, no single nation can be expected to handle such a crisis alone. Building a global framework for rapid disaster response is not just a matter of charity. It is a matter of shared survival in an increasingly volatile world, where one nation's tragedy can have ripple effects across the globe. As the floodwaters slowly begin to recede, the long and arduous task of rebuilding begins. It is a process that will take years, if not decades. But amidst the ruins, there is a determination to build back better and smarter. Survivors are not just victims, they are the architects of their own recovery, armed with first-hand knowledge of where the old systems failed. By listening to their voices and learning from the painful lessons of this tragedy, the region can forge a more resilient future. The floods of 2025 were a wake-up call, a devastating reminder of our planet's changing climate. The ultimate legacy of this disaster will be determined by how we answer that call, with resolve, innovation, and a renewed commitment to protect our most vulnerable communities.